Good evening, guys. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Eleni Glouftsis, obviously. I'm 25. Originally from Adelaide, but have moved to Melbourne since, and I'll tell you about that shortly as we go along. Now, as Tony said, I don't normally get up and speak to a group of officials for this long, so I've got some slides to assist me and to keep you looking elsewhere than just me for this time. Obviously, there's a bit of a picture of my first match, and we'll get to that as we go through the story, much like Tony's. I currently am a health and PE teacher as well, so just like most officials, and obviously as you heard from Tony as well, I don't umpire full-time. My full-time role is a health and PE and science teacher at a school in Melbourne. I'm here to talk to you about my journey to becoming an AFL umpire, and like most of you in here, and as we saw of the statistics, most people start and continue umpiring or officiating through their love of the game, and that was my reasoning as well. I've got some really lovely embarrassing photos up here to share with you as well. So my umpiring story and journey started when I was in Year 9 at high school, and I just started umpiring through a notice in the Daily Bulletin. So basically it said, come and try umpiring, and I thought, well, I love football. I've grown up kicking the footy with my dad and my brother, and thought, what a way to be involved in the game. I umpired my first year in under-8s in the Green Shirt program. So as you can see here, the Green Shirt program is a national initiative which said that every first year football umpire would wear a green shirt in comparison to the orange which we would normally wear. The idea in the green shirt is to have people understand that you're a first year and you may make some mistakes, and to hopefully cut you a little bit of slack with that. Whether it works or not, I'm not entirely sure. But it gave people a bit of an indication as to, here's someone giving it a really good go, normally a young person, so be a bit respectful in the way that you kind of work with them. My first role as an umpire was at the North Eastern Metro Junior Football Association, in which I had a lot of support from fellow umpires and the coaches. Similar to Tony, in that young junior environment, I had one other female there who started with me, but as we saw, again, like the statistics, she was only there for a year and she moved on from that. I loved it, however, and the really great thing about my junior association was that all the boys as well were really passionate about footy, and that's what kept us going and made those friendships a lot more strong and a lot easier to get along with the boys. So that didn't ever bother me that there were no other girls out there. I just loved footy, and so I kept going back. I was able to have a few mentors out at the North Eastern Metro Junior Football Association. It's a bit of a mouthful, sorry, the NEMJFA we call it. And they helped me along the way to kind of progress through my career into the SANFL. I've got a little bit of a clip here to show you about that. So that was my first year at the SANFL. You probably noticed a really outdated uniform that didn't fit me. It was about 5 sizes too big. But that was umpiring for me when I first started. Nothing really fit. There were no change rooms for me. There were no anything particular that was female about this part of my journey, but I love football and that's why I kept coming back. As I moved forward through the SANFL, I began in the under-16s, and this was like some of the competitions, it was a new competition instigated by the National Under-16s competition. So I was lucky enough to umpire in this competition throughout my journey, and then from that moved on to under-16s, under-18s, reserves and seniors football. This was at the SANFL, and this was you were invited out to come to the SANFL. So basically you start in your junior panel, and then when they think you're ready, you've progressed, you get invited out to the SANFL. Here we have training twice a week, which was a lot more professional than what our junior league had been, which was once a week. We had coaching sessions, conditioning sessions, which were a lot more of that elite level, which hopefully led most of them to AFL level. This is where I also met my partner Dylan, who's lovely enough to join me tonight. He's a boundary umpire in the AFL, and the great thing about being with other umpires, probably Tony understood as well, is that you understand the commitments that you make. It's not just a 2-night a week, 1 day on the weekend type of job. It's really a life thing. It's a life choice where you make these commitments and these choices to help develop yourself to make it to the elite level and then hopefully stay there. During this time I umpired, I was lucky enough to umpire in a few different junior grand finals, and also in that time I umpired at the South Australian Men's Amateur League Football Association. Now, unlike the SANFL, these men were not there to progress to AFL, so they were a little bit less disciplined, I guess you could say. It was at this level I really learnt to be confident in my decisions. A lot of discussion about decisions would take place in that type of competition, and it was there that I really decided that this is umpiring and I love it. And you're never going to make everyone happy with the decision, especially in footy. A lot of vocal spectators, 50% of the crowd are not going to agree with the decision, and that doesn't mean it's incorrect. The most important thing I learnt then was to be confident in my decisions and know that It's not always going to be everyone's preferable decision, but be confident in yourself and you can go from there. I was really lucky to have a really supportive family network, and I'll speak about that a few times throughout this presentation, that having my family and friends supporting me throughout my whole journey from a Year 9 student who wanted to actually umpire football to go then all the way through to AFL. I slowly progressed through the SANFL ranks, and similar, I guess, to Tony, I was someone who probably wasn't looked at straight away for that first senior or league position. So I umpired 54 games in reserves, which after being at the SANFL for 4 years, it's quite a lot of games before I was finally appointed to my first senior match. So in 2013, I was appointed to my first senior match, in which I umpired between North Adelaide and Glenelg. This is the first time a female has umpired in a field umpiring role in a state league match throughout Australia. We've been really lucky to have a number of goal umpires and throughout the state leagues and now the AFL, but I was the first female to field umpire in a state league match. So with that came a lot of media attention that I probably wasn't really prepared for, but lucky enough the game went really well and I was really pleased to kind of progress from there. Throughout the next couple of years, I umpired in the State League in SANFL and was lucky enough to be appointed to the National Under-18s Championships. So the National Under-18s Championships involves games in different states, along with the final competition held in Melbourne. So what happens is you're appointed to these matches in Adelaide, in my case, and then Melbourne. And they're really fantastic about these opportunities. It's a chance for you to be seen by AFL observers, for them to provide feedback, but also to be umpiring with people from around different states and to hear their stories and help them to inspire you as well. I obviously did okay in that because I was taken out to dinner by Wayne Campbell, who was the head of AFL umpiring at the time, and Adam Davis, who's the current development officer, and talked to about the idea of the female field umpire pathway. This was a new initiative, a scholarship in which I was invited to move to Melbourne for 3 years, with the end result hopefully being me appointed to an AFL list. This was a fast-track system, so I'd be provided with an individual coach who would provide feedback for me on a week-to-week basis, hopefully with the idea of me finishing on the AFL umpiring list. It was very daunting. It was my first year teaching. I'd lived in Adelaide for my whole life. All my friends and family were there. But with a lot of support from them and from all my friends and family, we decided that Dylan and I would move to Melbourne with this opportunity of umpiring in the AFL potentially. It was a scary move, and albeit a lot shorter in terms of distance than some of the places in Australia, I guess. We moved Dylan and I from Adelaide to Melbourne in 2015. I was really lucky to be appointed a position at a college in Essendon in Melbourne, and it was really great that I had that job there already, which was great support for me. I struggled with a bit of a foot injury at the start of pre-season. That made it just a little bit more challenging in terms of getting to know VFL umpires, getting to know AFL umpires, and getting to know the staff at my school. Sounds like a bit of a cliche, but you really appreciate all the people, all the things you had at home when you start to move away and have all these other challenges that come up to you. The great thing about the AFL and VFL though was people were really welcoming and really encouraging, and again, they hadn't really seen that many females doing what I had done before. So what you can see in those photos though is a lot of females, which is excellent. We were lucky enough to be involved in all women's game in Darwin, which is the bottom corner, an all under-18s TAC Cup, which is obviously men's football, but an all-female panel, and obviously a couple other games amongst that. I was really lucky to be appointed Steve McBurney as my individual coach. He'd umpired over 400 AFL games, so he had a wealth of knowledge and experience and had a really positive and refreshing way to speak to me and help encourage me along the way. So he came out to all of my matches throughout 2015 to help give me feedback individually, week to week, so I could consistently see what I need to improve and then hopefully go from there. In 2016, I had a really good pre-season, which was for the first time in probably a few years. I stayed injury-free. I did club visits at Collingwood and Essendon and intra-club matches at St Kilda and Essendon, and in February was appointed to my first NAB Challenge pre-season match between Carlton and Essendon. This is the first time a female had umpired any sanctioned AFL match, and so with that came a bit of media attention, albeit me thinking it's just a pre-season match. My goal was still to umpire an AFL match. The media build-up was quite big, but it was really positive. And in umpiring, in officiating in general, we don't get a lot of positive stories. So I really embraced the fact that people were encouraging and looking forward to seeing me on this stage, which was excellent. It was definitely a step up from the VFL, and it was really exciting to be involved in that game. Later that month, I was put onto the rookie list. So what that means is that you sit as an emergency umpire in different AFL matches. You run around, you warm up on game day, you sit on the bench, and you're involved in different things, like if there's a melee, if there's a blood rule, if there's a person to come off as an umpire, you'd replace them, and just communication with the on-field umpires. The idea of a rookie position is that you really get to actually understand what's required on match day, and a really great pathway between state league footy and then going up to the AFL elite level. I umpired 10 games that year, and also NEFL, SAFL and VFL from there. One thing that this umpiring pathway in general has really led to me is lots of different experiences. And I was really lucky a couple of years ago in 2016 to be invited to an International Women's Day event in which Malcolm Turnbull was present. He actually spoke to me on the way into the event, and we talked about what football was and what it required. So he's not obviously from one of the southern states that football's really big in, so he doesn't know a lot about footy. And he asked me, what are the requirements? And I said, we have to run around 10 to 15 Ks a match and this and that, and he was really interested in it. He posted this photo and quote on Twitter later that night, which I thought was just extraordinary. There should be no occupation, no goal, no role, no leadership position which a young woman, a girl, cannot simply aspire to because of her gender. Eleni Glouftsis is a brilliant role model and an exemplar of this. She is the AFL's first female field umpire, running between 10 to 15 kilometres in a single game. She is awe-inspiring on every level. Now, it was amazing to be acknowledged by the Prime Minister of Australia, but it was more than that. It was the fact that he was actually acknowledging that women and girls could play any role they want in everyday life, and whatever it might be, at an elite level of sport, in any type of job it might be. He was acknowledging that it doesn't matter that you're gender, but you can be what you want to be if you kind of put your mind to it and you have that support behind you. Going into 2017, I was really lucky enough to actually be appointed to the senior list. Now, this is not really what I had expected. This is 1 year ahead of my scheduled female pathway, but it was really exciting because it felt like it meant that they thought I was finally ready to actually umpire my first AFL match. Sorry, I have to excuse me a minute. I was lucky enough that year to do 4 pre-season matches, so I was able to actually perform consistently at that high level. I travelled from New South Wales to South Australia, Victoria, and a range of places to do that. Down the bottom is a picture of the group of boys I umpired with in my first AFL badge, and they were really fantastic support. So that year, after being appointed to the senior list, I umpired the first 8 weeks in VFL state footy, and then was appointed to my match in round 9 between Essendon and West Coast. The announcement of my match when they called me on the Monday just happened to be my birthday, so it was a really exciting announcement. I thought they were pulling my leg for a minute just to give me a birthday present, but I was so thrilled, and so it was such a positive experience to kind of go through that week. Rather than me talking about it, I'm going to show you just a really quick video about that week.
The AFL has selected the first female field umpire to officiate in a senior game. Eleni Glouftsis will be one of the umpires at this weekend's match between Essendon and West Coast. As Ben Lisson reports, it's been a long road for the 25-year-old teacher who began umpiring in South Australia 9 years ago.
Eleni Glouftsis treated today's training session like any other.
Every single game I go out to umpire, I do the best I can, regardless of 1 camera or 15 cameras. I'm out there to prove that I can do the job.
While she's staying grounded, it's not every day the Prime Minister offers his congratulations.
I'm just delighted that she's going to be the umpire for a senior game.
Glouftsis will be the first woman to become a top official in any men's football code in Australia. Her selection comes after strong form in the AFL's pre-season competition.
She's got there on her merits. She's an excellent umpire who's going to have a long career in our game.
The improvement that Eleni's made, especially this year, through the full JLT games, just meant that we had to do it.
The 25-year-old's path to the AFL began in South Australia.
I was really lucky to be involved with some fantastic coaches out there. For example, Shane Harris, who has just helped my development throughout my whole career.
I've known Eleni and her family for now 7 or 8 years, and to see her achieve is just, it makes you very proud.
Shane Harris mentored Eleni when she first took up umpiring and has one more piece of advice ahead of Sunday's match.
I always used to say, just enjoy it, because if you're not going to enjoy it, it's hard yakka.
While debuts for players feature jumper presentations, first goal celebrations and post-game drenchings, Glouftsis hopes she won't be the centre of attention this weekend.
You know, I'm going to make mistakes, and everyone does, and so I just hope that when I go out there, do the best I can, and that can help encourage others, female and male, to be involved in umpiring, which is such a great place in football.
An undeniable passion that's driven her to the top of the game. Ben Lisson, ABC News, Melbourne.
So I thought rather than me just talking about it, I'd just show you some vision, and albeit not very clear, just an indication of the different people that help you along the way, including my SANFL coach and my AFL coach now, and Gilla McLaughlin, who's been a real supporter of diversity and gender equality within football as best he can. So that week was pretty crazy with all the media build-up, and albeit it was a little bit daunting, as I said, like the previous pre-season match, it was really positive, and so that was the really encouraging thing, that people were really excited to see a female, not just in the goals, but also running around on the field as well in AFL. As Tony kind of mentioned, that first day was a bit of a blur. You know, I look back on it, and that was only last year, and I can barely remember the different aspects that happened in it. I can safely say I did not bounce well, albeit that one might look something okay, but that's something that I continue to work on, and I think throughout the game most of my decisions were generally sound, and it was a really big step up from VFL, but I really enjoyed the experience. I was really lucky enough to umpire with two fantastic umpires who actually went on to umpire the AFL Grand Final that year, so having the support of Simon Meredith and Sean Ryan was made me feel confident going into that game. Of course, there was negative criticism after that match, but when you have 15 to 20 different camera angles, they're going to see something different, whether it is correct or I'm correct or whatever it might be. That's going to happen in football and in any type of officiating, and I think that it's just important to make sure that no matter what the decision is, you go out there and you do your best, and also you own it when you do make a mistake. I don't have this written here, but for example, I umpired a game in Launceston, which is actually pictured up here, where Ben Brown took an absolute screamer. So he took this screamer, probably mark of the year according to all of the commentators, and I called play on. So the way I saw it, he didn't fully take the grab. The ball hit the ground, and so I called play on. And at that time, he kind of looked at me that he wasn't impressed with the decision, and I went back and just said to him, I didn't see you mark it, so I couldn't pay it. On the replay, it was a mark, absolutely. And I had lots of people come and ask me, and I'm not going to lie about it, I made a mistake. A player kind of got in my way, I was in the wrong position, and I made a mistake. And so I think the most important thing is to own it and learn from that and move on. There's no point going out there and telling people things that didn't happen, and you can only grow from that. So the really great thing, and I was really lucky in the aspect that Ben Brown is actually a fantastic person, and he came up later and said to me, was that a mark? And I said, look, I didn't think it was at the time, but I could be wrong. And I think the really important thing, and all of you will know this, that relationships with not only your fellow umpires but also the players is paramount to the way they treat you and the way they talk to you, whether you're female or male. That relationship will really impact on every type of situation. If you can have that relationship with players, especially at the elite level where it is sometimes it feels like the be-all and end-all for them, it's going to hopefully help to calm down that situation. Throughout the rest of that year, I was lucky enough to umpire in Alice Springs during Indigenous round, in Launceston, up in the Gold Coast in a 4-umpire system, and over in Perth for one of the last times in Domain Stadium. So all those different games motivated me to get fitter and stronger and get better at umpiring, to really want to be able to umpire as many games as I could in the next year. Officially, we train 2 nights a week with the AFL. We go through a range of things during those times. We have our coaching session, our conditioning session, our strength and our match simulation session. So during our coaching, we discuss free kicks, positioning, communication, management, support and skill scenarios, and watch vision. We look at a few statistics, and we normally focus on marking context and holding the ball, because they actually make up 50% of our free kicks. So they're ones that we generally have a look at more than others. In footy, we're really lucky as well. We've got lots of those interpretational free kicks. So that means that we have to really understand that line between, is this a free kick and is this not a free kick? We then have conditioning, in which we go through lots of different fitness aspects, between short runs, 200s up to 1K efforts. This is integral because, as most of you are aware, the AFL field is 110 metres approximately by 140 metres, so we really need to be fit and on the ball, but not only for the whole time, which is 4 by 25 to 34 minute quarters, but also in terms of getting into the mark quickly, getting into different volatile situations as quick as we can. So we also need to have that endurance, but be quick at the same time. Within that conditioning, we have match simulation. So we do some patterned running, we do some decision making, we do some skills, we do some bouncing. We try and make every training session like a match as best we can in terms of time and in terms of the positions and the decisions and the skills that we do. After that, we go on to strength training. So this is all in one session each of those different nights a week. And we prepare our body as best we can for that type of session. Outside of these 2 nights, we then are expected to do recovery, cross-training, massage, swimming, bikes, more running, and all these things to prepare us appropriately for an AFL match, which lasts around 2.5 hours these days. On match day, we get coaching and feedback on the spot and also post the matches. So we are mic'd up all the time to communicate with our fellow umpires and also for the crowd to hear us on TV, but also with the coaches. So at any stage during the match, they could kind of talk to us if they wanted to give us some immediate feedback, or we can get information during the breaks and then also post-match. After the match, it's not just the coach that assesses us, we self-assess every single match. So we'll re-watch the match back and we'll actually self-assess according to 5 criteria: decision-making, support, communication, management, and skills. We self-assess, we send our feedback through the match coach, they then send their feedback back after they've seen ours, and then on Tuesday night, we as a team, so all 3 umpires will sit down and we'll discuss that feedback. We don't leave until we've all kind of understood why that might have been error or why that might have been correct. We talk about positioning and how we got to that decision, not just the decision itself. This season, so we've got 2018 now, most of you might have seen we had AFLX this year. So a bit of a fun, exciting form of footy, hopefully, which is really actually targeted more at Queensland and New South Wales viewers, because it is probably something that you can implement a lot easier with your more rectangle fields for rugby and soccer and things like that. The really great thing about AFLX was it was a great opportunity for some of the younger umpires to try something different and to really get involved as a team, as we had to learn a few different rules and adjudicate those to match. So a fun and enjoyable time, albeit probably not the most best spectator sport we've heard, but a really fun and enjoyable kind of way to start the pre-season. The rest of that, this pre-season, we've kind of had intra-club matches, and I've umpired in Moreton Bay this year, which was incredibly tough because of the hot and humid and sunny conditions. And I came up to Cairns and I thought to myself, how do you guys run around every day? I have no idea, so well done. I'd come from Adelaide and Melbourne and it just is significantly different down there, so credit to you guys running around in this humidity all the time. One thing that is really important as any kind of official, any kind of umpire, is the camaraderie. And over the past 3 years of living in Melbourne, I've built strong relationships with all the AFL umpires, as we can always talk about footy. That's the one common thing we always have. It's important to get to know your teammates, as we're a team out there on the field, and at the end of the day, you might make 1 error or you might make 3 good decisions, but it's the team result. They'll look at the umpires, not just an umpire at the end of the day. So it's really important to support your mates on the field every time you go out there. I've been lucky enough to have a few mentors along the way, including AFL umpires who used to train at the SNFL, so Derek Woodcock and Mick Avon when I was really young, and then current umpires who went on to the AFL while I was at the SNFL as well. As I mentioned, I was lucky enough to have Steve McBurney as my individual coach, but also guys like Simon Meredith and Sean Ryan, who I did my first game with, who are so open and willing to want to help you. The really great thing about AFL umpiring now is it really is a team environment. It used to be very individual and wanting to see you do well and maybe no one else, but now it is a team, and we know we're only successful if the team on the day is successful. There are lots of different pathways available now, which is very different from when I first started. There's many different championships. There's the diversity championships, under 18s girls championships, national under 18s boys championships, which all provide young umpires opportunities to see what it's like to be at the next level. It's also an opportunity for them to travel, to meet other umpires from different states, to be watched by AFL observers, and also to meet current AFL umpires who might give them feedback and inspire them to be where they want to be. The National Sporting Organisation, in this case, obviously the female pathway was an initiative that they kind of took up, which was where I got to where I am. But obviously we've got the AFLW now, which is another really fantastic initiative, because a lot of people start playing and then become an umpire, or they might play and umpire. And so I think being able to have females involved in more aspects is going to mean more umpires in general needed, because there's more games, but also lead to more females umpiring. And you know, we can see from all of us here, and what, you know, we're probably the people who understand it most. Females can do all these roles, and it's fantastic to see them being able to do these things and are involved in the game in a way they can be, which is officiating in lots of ways. Other pathways include the player umpire pathway, and we've currently got 2 field umpires in Lee Fisher and Andre Gianfagna field umpiring, and David Roden, who was obviously a player for Melbourne and Richmond and Port, as a goal umpire. So again, we've got the AFL is trying to take initiatives and have different pathways for people to become from that playing aspect or from any other aspect into that umpiring role. This pre-season, we have taken on an opportunity to create a new set of values. We used to have some values, but this time what we wanted to do was actually create them as a team. So we created them with the field, boundary and goal umpires, all three disciplines, working as a team to create these values. So we created our purpose. The role of the umpiring team is to apply the laws and manage the game to ensure it's played in a safe and fair manner. And as officials and umpires, that is our role. Our prime objective is to keep the players safe and adhere to those rules so we can all play in a fair and successful manner to get the result we want. We created these values then: elite, team, and respect the game. Now, if you want to be successful, it's not just about applying these different behaviours on a training or a game day, it's about applying them in life. If you can have these reflecting your own core values, you're on the way to being more successful. It was really important for us to create these as a team because it meant that we were all able to have this expectation of one another. So whether it's field, boundary or goal, I know I expect these things from the people I go out to umpire with. It gives us an opportunity to build healthy, strong, and sometimes challenging relationships that we know we can have those harder conversations with because we've got this as our backbone. We always want to be needing to improve and seeking feedback, implementing feedback, asking questions, and wanting to be better. One of the umpires pictured before, Sean Ryan, has this quote, and it sticks to me, and I really think about it pretty much every time I go out to umpire. We are the calm ones. And in every situation, whether it be as an official, an umpire, referee, whatever aspect you're involved in, even whether you're the coach, if you can remain calm in a more volatile situation, that's going to actually calm that situation down. So if you think, for example, some of the players in the AFL, you can probably think of your own example, whatever sport it might be, have white line fever. And as soon as they get a free kick or a free against them or something doesn't go quite their way, they come straight up to the umpire referee. If you can lower your tone and actually compose yourself, you're going to actually calm the situation down. It's very rare that when you speak to someone in a calm tone after they've yelled at you, they're going to continue to yell at you. They may, but it's going to more quickly resolve the situation. Whether than you yell back at them is not going to help at all. So we're the calm ones, something I think about on a day-to-day basis in terms of as a teacher and also as an umpire in terms of how I can actually help to control the situation that might be volatile or might be challenging in some way. Looking back at my journey, I think if I was to do things differently, probably I'd ask more questions early in my career. So I think that it's really hard sometimes when you go into a new position, whether it be a new association or a new league or a different place, it's hard to ask questions because you don't want to look like you don't know something. But I think that particularly in the fields I've been in, people have been really encouraging and supportive. And if you can ask questions of the senior umpires or the coaches, they know that you want to learn and you want to be better. And that's the most important thing they think about. I'd probably also try and practice recovery techniques a bit more, which is probably something that I've been not so good with in the past. I've had a bit of an ongoing foot injury. I need to probably practice massage, ice baths, all those different stretching, things that you can do yourself to make sure you're ready to go each time. Like any job and anything, friends and family are so important. And I'm so lucky to have an amazing friend and family support network behind me. My high school friends up in the corner there came to my first SAFL match and made a great sign. And then again, they travelled over to Melbourne to watch my first AFL match. It's really fantastic to have their support because, again, growing up as an umpire, it's not something that people kind of look forward to. You know, your friends are going out to parties and things and you've got to get up on a Sunday at 9 a.m. and umpire an under-8s match. But it's something I was passionate about and my friends were really supportive of that as well. I've been fortunate enough to be able to share some really special moments with my family as well. I was able to take my dad to the AFL Hall of Fame induction dinner this year. I was able to take my parents as well to the South Australian Sports Awards night where I was nominated as Official of the Year. I didn't win it. One of the cricket umpires who umpires at international level won it, but it was just fantastic to be involved and also to be able to take my parents to an event to kind of acknowledge their support as well. Most importantly though, it was really important and really rewarding for me to have my family and my nana especially there to cheer me on my first AFL game. This has been and still is a team effort and not an individual effort. This game and kind of hopefully going forward was a reward for all the hard work that they have put in and I've put in. In particular, it was rewarding to have my 92-year-old nana there as support. She along with my mum and dad came to watch pretty much all of my matches in South Australia over the years, and she's been an inspiration to me my whole life. She's a strong, kind and caring woman I've always looked up to, and it was really a pleasing and really a reward to know that she was proud of me and able to come along on that day. So to kind of summarise, in conclusion, as my SAFL coach Shane Harris said, he would always sign his emails off when he sent an email about appointments, an email about rule changes, whatever it might be, he would always sign it off, enjoy. And I think that's the most important thing. If you're enjoying something that you do, whatever sport it is, and if it's whatever level it is, international, state league, junior levels, if you're enjoying it and you're passionate about it, it's important to you, go ahead and do it. Sometimes you're going to get told you can't do things, and sometimes you're going to get pushed into things you might not want to do as much. But if you're enjoying it and you want to learn from it and be the best you can, it's important to go out there and to do the best you can every time. Thank you.